level up, big level 74. Congratulations to you. Okay. So we're going to get started with that. And we're going to talk about the crucial role that goes on from a parent to a child in shaping their upcoming and their outlook on life. So if you wasn't sure or something like that, on tonight's show, I have a very special guest. What is going on? I have a very special guest. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to have her here. And y'all, she's been booked for a minute. So the fact that she's here now, hi CocoMa, how are you?
Hi, love. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm so glad to see you and happy to have you here. Thank you for being here tonight. Shout out to the Dragons. I appreciate you, Casper.
Absolutely. Go
That's
off then, Casper.
excuse me. So before we get started on the conversation, first of all, I want to thank you because, like I said, you've been booked for a while. I remember stopping in your stream and we were like, oh my goodness, let's talk about that. And then we ended up messaging about it a little bit more. So I'm really excited to hear your outlook and the things that you have to contribute to this conversation, because I feel like it's going to be a really, really awesome one. But before we get into that, please go ahead and tell the people, if they aren't sure, who you are, what you got going on, and what they can expect in your stream.
Definitely. Hello, everyone. I am CocoMa. I have been streaming for 5 years. I've been a top badge for 4. Um, Pretty much what I do in my stream is literally learn about other people's culture depending on wherever they're from, even if they're from the states, because I've noticed that different states have different cultures.
Mm.
So, and I also love to learn, I mean, to teach people about my culture because I am African.
Mm.
So yeah, pretty much.
I love that. I love that. And I feel like that perspective is going to be a well needed one during this conversation. So again, I am so excited to have you here. You said you've been on tag for 5 years, a top edge for 4. Congratulations. That's huge. I never I you're the vet. You're the vet in the building. Let me find out. Do you have any current streaming goals you'd like the modern day Bay community to know about or support you on?
No, in all honesty, I just stream. I'm a dedicated random streamer. So honestly, just catch me when you catch me.
That DRS.
But yeah, that's about it.
I love it.
Yep.
Okay. All right, cool. So this is my one question that I ask every single co-host that comes on the show. In one word, what is the characteristic, the most important one that you need in your modern day Bay? Hi, Ray.
That's a very good question. I would say optimistic.
Mm, to be optimistic. I love it.
Hmm.
Okay. Gotta have a can-do attitude.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotta be able to look at the brighter side of things. Okay. We like that. We like shout out to Lola with the brighter side every Friday at 11 a.m. Okay.
That part.
All right, perfect. So I am going to invite the Boss Bae panelists up. But while they request the box, I'm going to ask you a few questions about tonight's topic just to get your personal input on it before we start the conversation in the open forum manner, okay? So, what
Mhm.
are some specific traditions from your childhood that that contributed to your sense of identity?
That is a very good question. And I feel like, in all honesty, I kind of do it right now, but
Hmm.
it's looked down in the States. So it's very weird. The first thing that comes into my mind is like, you know how like when somebody's talking to you, you look them in the eye and to
Hmm.
show that like we don't do that in Cameroon. So when somebody's talking to you and when it's your elder person, an elderly person,
Right.
you kind of look down. So like
Oh, so
that's
eye contact is kind of disrespectful there.
exactly. So that's
Wow.
like totally different. Like it's the opposite over here. And I'm just like, okay. Like, but
Wow.
that was
Okay.
one that I had to like literally like train myself to do. Yeah.
Okay. I love it. I love it. Shout out to AV in the building, Junior. Thank you for that fave. That's really interesting. And that's why I'm so excited that you're here for this conversation because you're going to bring a whole new perspective. Like, I'm just so excited. I'm going to ask you one more question before we bring the Boss Day panel up. Um, What routines from your family have been passed down? What? I'm sorry. What's your opinion on inherited trauma?
Mm, I believe that that's a real thing. And I feel like I always divert to like Cameroon because I was born and raised in Cameroon, so like I have um half of my life was in Cameroon basically.
Mhm.
So um as as an African, I don't think we really concentrate on mental health. So
Mhm.
like we literally actually inherit like a lot of traumas from our parents. So which is shocking because when I came here, I was thinking about like stuff that happened when in my childhood and I'm like, wait, that was really traumatic. Like that's
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah, I think it's a real thing. Like it's a serious thing that we have to actually pay attention to.
Yeah, yeah. So just to give y'all a little bit of a heads up, and I like to make sure that whenever we talk about these things, I do give y'all a warning. We are going to talk about that conversation. The reason why I asked you that is we're going to go into a little bit of like what passing down traditions and generations and through cultures look like, and how some of those things, even though they may have started good, kind of developed into more negative things. How we kind of tend to latch onto everything that our parents or our guardians or the people that raised us tell us, even the good and the bad. So it's easy to pass down both of those things whenever we talk about tradition, and when we talk about cultural and generational energies and how they're transmitted to the next generation. So super super, like I said, excited to have you here. Let me bring up the Boss Bae panel. I want them here. I see my girl Big Bag Harley. I see my girl Naj in the building. And y'all, again, I try to make sure that the people who are here for certain conversations are the people that can contribute the absolute most. And I am so excited to have CocoMa and Naj on the same panel. It's not even funny. So I'm really excited. Okay, so let's do some introductions. Big Bag Harley, we can start with you. Tell us who you are, what you got going on, my love.
Hey, it's your favorite cousin, Big Back Harley. Fave me up and follow me on Instagram. I'm just a random streamer right now. You can catch me when you can. However, I am the creator of the 2024 feature show host calendar. Okay, get you a copy. The revised edition is out and available. Okay.
Period. Miss Naj.
It's your favorite alien, and you can catch me right after this in Rainmakers Live for Unfiltered, where we test your level of honesty. So that's going down tonight. And you can also catch me on my own show every Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can catch me every second Sunday in Daddy Demons Live for Sinful Sundays, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Period. Okay. And of course, Mr. Top Badge. Joke's on you with the suit. I noticed you changed.
Well, this is Modern Day Bay, and this is a featured show, so we're going to present ourselves as such at all times, no matter what Casper says. So, this is Jokes on You. We just got finished leaving Tough Talk Tuesday. It's a Tough Talk tour, starting with me, then going, as she said, with Double L, Modern Day Bay, where we are, and then Unfiltered with Naja Rainmaker. So if you're not seeing me on Tuesday night, catch me on Sunday mornings on drums at 11 a.m. If worship is your thing, come in here, worship with us, friends that pray together, stay together. See you there.
Period. You heard him. Y'all make sure y'all fave up these beautiful people in the boxes today. Thank you, Kokomon, for being here. Thank you to the
Thank
panelists
you
for
for
being here. If
having
you're
me.
just tuning in, this is Modern Day Bay with Elle. This happens every single Tuesday, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you tap in, set your alarms, put it on your calendar, whatever you need to do to be here, do it. Okay? We want you here, period. So tonight, like I said, we're kind of talking about the traditions that our parents passed on to us and how and some of the ramifications of carrying on those traditions and those generational energies into the next and what that looks like, right? So let's just get right into it. Let's start with Kokomo, and then we can go down to Harley and make our way through the line, okay? So the first question here is what behaviors or attitudes that you inherited from your previous generations influence your daily life? So Kokomo, you kind of gave us a little bit with the eye contact and what that looks like for you and what you were taught. But what are some of the attitudes, right? So some of the things that you hold on that actually um, that influence like the way you do things on a daily basis.
Absolutely. So right now I live with my uncle and aunt, and I'm a female, so I have to literally put food on the table and set the table, so that yeah, that's kind of like a tradition. So, the woman of the house has to do that for the men of the house. So pretty much that's something that I still do till today. So yeah, I would say that that's a tradition that I took from birth, from when I was a little girl, not birth.
And when you say that, you mean literally like preparing it and putting it on the food, putting it on the table a certain way, making sure you serve it. Perfect. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. What about you, my friend? What are some behaviors or attitudes that you inherited that influence your daily life?
um, I grew up Southern, so a lot of
Hmm.
it's religion based. So yeah, I like pray in the morning, say my grace before I eat my food. What else? That kind of I don't know if it's like was just with my mama, but I find myself like yes ma'am, no sir. Like that's a thing, not just like to be polite, but like every at this point, it's like everything is a yes ma'am or a no ma'am or
Hmm.
like. And when I lived previously, it was people that's like that was offended by that, like don't call me ma'am or don't call me sir, like don't approach me or address me like that. You don't realize how hard it is to not do something when because you're in an environment that supports that.
Right.
Until you get in one that doesn't. So I would definitely say that's a hard one for me, even to this day, or to not put what my mom calls like a handle on it. So it's Miss or Mr. or Sir or Ma'am. I'm always gonna attach something like that to somebody when I'm talking. So
Hmm.
that's something for me that affects every day.
And I want y'all to pay attention to what she said. It's hard. I don't realize how hard it is not to do something, to unlearn something, whenever you're in an environment that supports that on a regular and consistent basis. That is so real. And we're going to get more into that later. So I appreciate you saying that. Miss Naj, what are some attitudes or behaviors that you inherited that influence your daily life?
I'm definitely gonna say like something very similar. The titles and respecting the
Hmm.
elders thing. That's
Hmm.
something that to this day I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna call someone older than me by their first name.
Hmm.
Hey, what's up, Joe? How you doing? Never. Like that's crazy. So
Right.
never do that. So it's just like really kind of like respecting your elders, speaking to them in a certain way. And then also the other thing I think from mine background is also work ethic, the importance of like education and work and doing those things, not slacking. And the last thing I can pick up that I know I do that came from childhood is the Saturday morning or the Sunday morning, put on the tunes and clean your whole house thing.
Hello.
So, so I feel like that's a Black experience or a Caribbean experience where you already know, but this is what we do. We clean it. Like, so just that idea of cleanliness, being close to godliness and hygiene and all that other stuff. There was just things that were embedded in me that today's kids I kind of see just kind of went lax. But I know
Hmm.
in my time period, like we're not playing that. You better get up and clean up and you better carry yourself a certain way. We're not going outside with the pajamas on and all that stuff.
Yeah. And I don't know about y'all, but when I heard mine was in cartoons, when I heard my mom put on the SOS band, it was over. It was over. Baby, we can do it. It was over. I already knew what it meant. I already knew what time it was. That's how I woke up. Like, Mr. Jokes, Mr. Top Bad Jokes. What about you? What are some attitudes or behaviors that you inherited that influence your daily life?
So being it being Black History Month, I know that I found myself looking for a Raisin in the Sun and Roots and all these other movies that I was forced to watch as a kid that I had to learn about and eventually became part of my thing to do during Black History Month.
Hmm.
My birthday was on Million Man March Day. So I
Oh,
was there during that time, and so it's symbolic to me during this period, Black History Month. I love this part of the year. Um, it's like one of the few times where brothers are always kind of like in a better mood. You can kind of approach people a little bit differently. So I remember um, my dad would always kind of like make us dress up a little bit more during that month. We would always be dressed up everywhere we went, and so um, yeah, that's something. Presentation, just giving back to people, and just watching what we say. You know, you says someone said about speaking to elders, like just making sure that we're watching our words a little bit differently.
right, right. Okay, I love it. I love it. Um, so I'm really grateful for all of you answering that question because I think it's important to understand like just little things like Harley said earlier that happen that like we just tend to pick up, which is like learned behavior that you don't even think about. And that's what you do, and that's kind of how you move. And eventually that's how you live your life as an adult. And if you have children, how you pass down things to them, right? Like you that's what they inherit then because that's what you know. So it's kind of like the cycle starting all over again. So considering, you know, your parents and how they brought you up or how your guardians brought you up, or your caretakers, and their parenting style, um, whenever it comes to parenting, and I understand that not all of us have children, but when it comes to parenting, like what do you think that you would raise your children like similarly to how you were raised, or do you fall more on the side that like no, I'm not going to raise my kids in the same way? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Kokomo, we can start with you.
Oh, absolutely. I believe that I will raise my kid the way I was raised with all the whooping and everything. I feel like I didn't turn out that bad, you know? Like I know that I do have some ups and downs, but I do believe that because I feel like it's part of my culture and it's embalmed in my culture, I want to pass that on, and I don't want to make my kids forget about, you know, their heritage and where they're from. So yeah, I
Love
think
it.
I'm
I love it. What about you, Harley? Considering how you were brought up, do you think you would bring your kids up the same way, or would you do things differently? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna do things differently. There are certain elements though
Okay.
that I would keep in place respectfully. Thank you, mother. But there are things that I would change, like growing up and coming into knowledge and learning things and living life. There are things that I would change or implement differently, or attempt to do my own way to have a different type of relationship and connection with my child. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my
Okay.
perspective.
Good to know. Good to know. Naj, what's your take on that?
So there's a quote that says, "You can't know where you're going until you know where you've come from."
Mm-hmm.
So I'm under the guise of there's certain things that you have to embed in your child from where they've come from. And I want my child to have a certain sense of like history and culture and pride, of what it is to carry the name that I give them. So I feel like we have to embed those things because there's going to be a whole lot of other ideas that come into that child's life over time, and if they don't have that foundational part that came
Mm-hmm.
from our previous generations, I think it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
hard for them. So in terms of their identity, so I think that part is something that's important to continue to carry on.
Okay, so I like that approach, like the foundational, like you said, the foundational things are really important to build on. How they grow may not be the exact same, but that foundation, that same sense of like culture and understanding is
Has
there. I
to be
like that.
there.
I
Yeah.
like that. What'd you say?
No, I said it has to be there, the foundation. So I feel like,
Okay.
with every generation, our thoughts, ideas, whatever change. So clearly there are going to be variations based on myself as a person and what I've grown up to be.
Right, right.
As long as I instill the foundation, I feel like then that's fine. We can veer off in different ways as long as we have a base.
Okay, very good, very good. What about you, Jokes? What's your take? Do you think you'll tend to like go the parenting style of like very similar to how you were raised, or are you gonna go in the opposite? Like, what's your sense on that?
I think it's gonna be a mix, just because I think that we there are things that I want to bring from my tradition. My dad being from the South, my mom being from the inner city. I got two different lessons each time, and the way my dad handled things is way different than the way my mom handled things, even though they both handled things, if you guys understand what I'm saying. Um, yeah, but my dad walked 3 miles to school without any street lamps in the woods in the swamp area, whereas we had snipers sitting in the bushes shooting us on the way to school. A little bit different, you know what I
Right.
mean? So my kids will have to be prepared for both situations, the past and the modern. I'm near the nation's capital. I told y'all, so it's a lot of different things going on all the time. You can't really just say what it was in the '90s and the early 2000s where we were coming up is the same thing that they're going to be dealing with in the next 5 to 10 years. So the traditions of the past will help us give us the foundation, as she said, and we have to continue to learn these lessons and pay attention because all of it's relevant.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Y'all, if you are just tapping in or if you just, started to get into the conversation. This is Modern Day Bay. We do this every single Tuesday at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name's Elle. I am your hostess. I'm here with my beautiful guest co-host of the week, Top Badge CocoMa, and I have my girl Big Bag Harley, my girl Naj, and my guy Top Badge Jokes on You on the panel tonight. So I am excited. We're talking about traditions and passing things down through generation and things like that. So I kind of went in that order with the questions so that we can see what we've adapted to as or what we've taken in from our parents or from the people that were most influential around us whenever we were younger, the things that we've held on to, and then like if we would pass those things down to our children. So that's kind of the order that those questions went in. And I did that because I really want to get into like how energies or beliefs or trauma or tradition, whatever, is passed down. Okay. So when traditions continue over a long period of time, they evolve into culture. That's just the way that you live your life. That's the way that several people around you live your life. That's the culture of the family. That's the culture of my people. That's the culture of my city, however you want to look at that. All right. So what are some of the things that are specific to your culture, however you identify or however you think of that word? Like, what are some of the things that are super specific that like maybe you like that's not something that you see? And I think Kokomo, you kind of said that with the eyes and making eye contact and what's deemed as respectful versus disrespectful. It's funny that those things are total opposite in different
I
regions.
know.
It's so funny. But like, do you have another example like that you'd like to share, something that's specific to your culture, or maybe that you grew up with that that is specific to your culture that you have kind of held on to?
That is a very good question. I have to think about that one.
You want me to come back to you when we get on to Big Bag
Yes.
Harley? Big
Let
Bag
me
Harley.
let me think real quick.
You
Okay,
kind of
from
touched
my
on this because you said about the Southern and the ma'am thing. Because you said, I will tell you, you come to the North and say, ma'am, they're going to be like, excuse me? Like, please don't. So what are the things, however you identify that word culture, right? City, state, whatever, your family, your
um,
people.
yeah, a lot of us are just very open. We just very welcoming, like immediately. Oftentimes cousin. That's a thing in the city. Like everybody's a cousin, everybody related. You from Atlanta, you my cousin. Hey cousin, you from Mississippi, and that's just something I took when I left the city. And that's not really true. Sometimes, like I said, when you're in an environment that supports that and that's what you're used to, it's a sense of camaraderie with that. Like I can talk to you a certain way because you're
Mhm,
from the same place, so you don't take it offensively
mhm.
or you don't look at me funny versus me going somewhere where it's not common at all. And everybody looking like, oh, why are you talking to me like that? I don't know you, it's and a
That sense
sense
of
of
community.
subservience too. I would say that would be like a more, I won't say negative, but like a more common one that I struggle with is subservience, like always putting others before myself, like growing up in that church culture. And we were always taught Jesus, others, yourself. That's
Mm,
going to bring joy to your life. And so ultimately, that's how you learn to live your life. Okay, I'm going to pray first, I'm going to put religion. Then now it's time to do for others. Make sure everybody else is cool and that the family's straight. And then, by the time you get down to yourself, there is not much left, which was a life lesson I had to learn the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
So those would kind of be like my two, a sense of welcoming your family environment and well, extending grace and open arms, but that comes with a sense of subservience that can kind of leave a bad taste.
Very interesting. So now we're starting to get into some of the things that you would do a little bit differently. I like it. I like it. What about you, Naj? What are some of the things, like you talked about laying that foundation? So what are some of those foundational things that are tied to your culture? I think that's pretty much what you were saying.
I'm gonna
Um,
say probably food is a big thing in my culture. So
okay.
I feel like I mean I don't know, like even though I was born and raised here, my family, my mother's on the southern side, my father's from the Caribbean side. So
Mm,
I just feel like both cultures, it's going down when it's coming to food, right? So
right.
I feel like food has always been a center. It's always been, having big dinners or being able to offer somebody food. Hospitality is a big thing for me. Etiquette is a big thing for me. So it's like just in the way that Harley talked about that welcoming nature. I could not, but when I got around other people who are like American, they did not, like, you go to their house and they don't even, like, they may give you water or something, but they're not big on like food. And it would be insulting to be like, how you have me in your crib and we didn't eat. I was here for
Right.
2 hours and no food happened at all. Like, that's crazy. So it's just things like that. Like, food is a big deal. And so just offering anything, food, your home, your shelter,
Yeah.
your something of you, that's a big part of the culture. I think in a culture and in a Caribbean,
Yeah.
culture is we have to offer you something.
I love that. That hospitable, that sense of community.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, it is. It's right there. That's kind of what Susie was saying too. That like camaraderie, that oh cousin, like it's just like that instant connection. And I love that's one of the things I love most about Black folks, to be honest with you. Can we lemon pepper that person, not Troy, but the person, you know what I'm saying, the other person? I would appreciate it. Thank you. All right, top bad jokes. So what are some of the things, some of the traditions specifically tied to your culture that you hold on to and that you want to see like continue in your family? That's
Um,
okay, Mr. K. I appreciate you.
I think Sunday dinner is
Mm,
important. Um, we might eat out, a few days out of the week or one day out of the week, but Sunday dinner if, was definitely a home cooked meal. That was a time where there was issues going on, personal in school, and whatever, even if it was your friends, it didn't even have to be you. Whatever that was going on was discussed at the table at that time. Before the week started, you knew kind of what your mindset was and how to approach what was going on, and it kind of kept you on track. So that's
mhm.
something I will keep going. Um, Writing hand letters to
Hmm.
our loved ones. Um, my great aunt was big on that. She always would write me a hand letter every holiday,
Yeah.
and when she passed, that's something like I do now. So if I have kids, I don't have kids, but if I have kids, that's something that they will do. They will have to write all these notes and get stamps and put them in cards and stuff to people so they can see and get involved in that sort of thing. Keep that tradition going, and also like she said about the food recipes, like my mother's potato salad recipe. There's certain recipes like that my other siblings don't know how to make. I know how to make, so that's on them. They want it. They know what they got to do. Okay, so that's what fellowship
I
is a big
love
deal, as
it.
you said.
I love it. I love it. Um, I love it. There's one comment actually that I wanted to read really quickly. And it said, Robert said, health is a big thing in my culture, making sure that we're passing down healthy characteristics, being mental, physical, and spiritual. And I think that's a really great point. But I think sometimes that's not always easy to determine, right? Like I said, whenever you take something in or whenever you're constantly in an environment, you kind of take in everything. So sometimes we get, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. But unfortunately, they all have a way of being passed along. And some of those bad things do make it through, just like some of the good things. Um, so when traditions are passed down, like I said, sometimes it results in a continuance of unfavorable behavior as well. So do you all believe in generational curses or generational trauma? And if so, why? And if not, why not? Kokoma, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Okay. Well, can I answer the the other
Oh,
question?
I'm so sorry. We were supposed
I
to
just
come back. I am
remembered.
so
It's
sorry.
okay.
I'm
It's
so used
okay.
to
No
going in
worries.
order.
No worries. But what I would say would be for everything everybody said is definitely a plus. But what I would add is in my culture, education is big in my culture. So like taking your kid from kindergarten to college, that is a huge thing. Like that's like a gift that for the African culture, like the parents say that they can take everything from you, but they can't take your education from you. So like that is like really huge in my culture. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And then I feel like it's sometimes important to think about these things and reflect on them because it is those very things, those little things that we don't even realize that we do that keep us connected, that keep us, you know what I mean, holding on to that sense of community, family, and just ultimately love, right? Like that's how you learn to foster love. And so I think it's really important to point those things out. Thank you for having us go back. So do you believe in passing down like negative energies or generation? Some people call them generational curses. I don't always like to say that because the word curse, like my brother said that earlier in his stream, like, do we have to call it a curse? But like, and no, we don't. So like, some people will call it like generational trauma, generational patterns. Like, do you believe in negativity being passed down and certain things that like you have no choice but to acknowledge it and overcome, if you will?
I do believe in that because I feel like kids are like sponges. So they literally react to what they see. So when they see it happen over and over again, they kind of pick up on it without even knowing that they picked up on it. So I do believe that it definitely can be passed down without knowing.
What about you, Big Bag Harley?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it can definitely be passed down. It can be learned behavior. It can be taught. You know that, especially because a lot of our elders weren't given space to be emotional or to have grace and areas to actually deal with their trauma. You know, so they kind of just raising us how they was raised, and how they was raised. You know, so I do believe it can be passed down, but at some point while it's being passed down, I do feel knowledge of truth comes along with that. So each generation gets more clarity until it comes to the point where one person or one generation is assigned to change the cycle or the course of that.
Excellent. KP, I see KP. Are you with me? I see you out there. Naj, what do you have to say? Do you believe in generational negative energy, generational negative patterns, curses, however you want to word it?
So there actually have been studies on this.
Mhm.
So just knowing the fact that they've studied and found out that trauma from our past, literally genetically, can be embedded in your genes.
Mhm.
So we think about like war and slavery and all of these things can then be embedded in your genes. So when you are having an offspring or a child being made, that it can guide what direction of what gene is activated or not activated. So just understanding the science behind like, epigenetics is like studying this right now. We know
Right.
that trauma can be embedded and passed on. So yeah, so we know that for a fact that it can happen. I will pull from Harley and say, so within that, if pain and trauma can be passed on, then joy and resilience can be passed on as well.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to leave it in a traumatic state of your parents or this or they've gone through that and now you have it in you. So I think we have both in us. We have the traumatic thing that's embedded in us, which is why we have certain energies when certain people walk by, things happen and we go, why do I feel so strongly about that? But that wasn't during my
Mhm.
time. So many of us pick, we have strong feelings about things that occurred in our Black history, but we weren't there. But why do we feel like it?
Right.
Feel so adamant, like I want to fight right now, So where does
Mhm.
that come from? That comes from what is embedded within us. So I feel like that same energy of our traumas and our pain, we also have a same energy of that warrior spirit, that resilience, that creativity, that, you know, all of that is going on within us as well from our ancestors as well.
And I love that. I want you to hold on to that because my next question is going into how to decipher like what to recognize to change versus what to recognize to keep
Okay.
allowing to happen. So thank you. That's phenomenal. Jokes, top bad jokes. What do you think? Do you believe in generational trauma? Do you see it to be prevalent in your experience?
Yes, in a lot of different ways, because we are so valuable. Every piece of us, every bit of us, every essence, down to our, you know, cells. Every part of us is valuable, and so we've been diminished in a lot of ways over the years, and in our own households, just fathers not being there, that's not by accident, that's by design. And that trauma in certain cycles of our structure for family has been, attacked in so many different ways. And so it's hard to break that wheel and it's hard to break that cycle. But yes, there are some things that get passed down because if your granddaddy did this and your daddy did this, then you're gonna do this too. That side, it becomes over a lot of overwhelming pressure for some people to have to deal with, hey, this was not have nothing to do with me, but it's a part of me, and to embrace it, and then to have the courage to look beyond it and keep moving forward and push yourself. So life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. So your attitude has to be in place.
Period. I love it. I love it. Um, So, for those of you just tapping in, welcome to Modern Day Bay with Elle. This is a show we do every single Tuesday at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's the only show on tag exploring, self love and healthy modern day relationships. And tonight we're talking about our parents, we're talking about where we learn things from, as well as how we adapt to actually living our lives with them. So, one of the dots that I just want to connect really quickly, and again, Naj, thank you for bringing up that point and talking about the research and the actual scientific, exploration that has gone on when it comes to trauma and passing it down. So whenever we say things like trauma over time or tradition over time becomes a culture, and then you think about how trauma is literally physically passed down, and you think about your ancestors, right, and where we came from, to say that we are not living in a constant state of trauma, in addition to the things that we deal with today, like through our own experience, like primary firsthand experiences, it's easy to see how, you know, how those things can manifest. It's easy to see how those things can ultimately be more damaging than good. One of the things I can think of right now is the whole idea about, and I don't want to get into like mental health or anything, but just like a lot of people in our community, we're starting to come around to the idea and warm up to it more, but like we're kind of told like we've always had to operate in secret. We've always had to operate in secret. So operating in secret felt safe. But now it's to a place where it's kind of damaging because like the more we hold on to things without talking about them, the more damaging it is to you emotionally and ultimately on your mental wellness, right? So just thinking about those things and how they kind of transpire into that. How can you recognize what needs to change versus what needs and versus what you want to continue to pass on? Like, I feel like it starts with recognition, with acknowledgement and understanding like, okay, this can't continue. And then you move into the steps of like breaking the cycle. But how do you initially pinpoint like, this is something that was good for me and that I want to move forward in versus this is something that I do not want to pass on or continue to engage in, not even with my own practices. So CocoMa, what's your take on that?
That is a very good question. So, um, like you spoke about mental health, it's it's a very new conversation when it comes to like for Cameroonians,
Right.
especially because I didn't know what it was when I was in Cameroon. Like I had no idea what a therapist was. Like I had no idea what. It's a lot of things that we're very ignorant about, to be honest with you. But
Right.
like I had to come here and like literally like educate myself about it and kind of figure that okay, um there are some things that happened in my past that I have to accept and learn to accept and just move on.
Mhm.
Um, which was very hard for me. So that's why like a lot of the questions that you're asking actually make sense to me now,
Mhm.
but it didn't make sense before because I'm just like mental health, like what? Like self health, like what all this? Like what is
Right,
going
right,
on?
right.
But now it's like I can at least speak on it a little bit because I'm going through that right now. Like it's an ongoing process for me, which is a very new process. So
Mhm.
I love like listening to um what everybody in the panel has to say because like I'm like a sponge. I'm still like literally like educating myself about
Right.
all this. So yeah.
Right. And that can be so it's that's still like in the process of like kind of sorting through what's best to keep practicing and what's best to let go of for your for
Right.
your well-being. And that's a process. So first of all, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable in that way. But second, congratulations to you because although it's a process, it's one that you've already started and it's one that on the other side is beautiful. So again, thank you for sharing that. Big Bag Harley, what is your take on that? How do you determine like this is what I want to keep. This is what I want to keep practicing. This is how I want to hold on to this tradition. But this is how I'm going to maintain my individuality and not do what is not best for me.
For me, it's trial and error. I'm a very action do type of person. I'm gonna put it to the test. I left home to see if I could, if it's a test what I was taught, my foundation, to see if I was able to stand on my own as a substantial adult out in the world, you know. And that's how I at this point process. That's how I figure. Okay, I'm going to take this principle, this foundation, this thought, this idea, and I'm going to implement it. And I'm
Yeah.
going to see how it works. I'm going to implement it the way it was taught to me. Does it make me feel good? Is it healthy for me? Is my mental okay? Are the people in my circle okay? Because the decisions I make don't just affect me. If I'm connected to you and I share their energy, they affect you too. So how are the people around me dealing with that? You know, and that's how I weigh. Like, yes, or that's not really the one. We need to tweak it, or yeah, I'm just not doing that at all. We scratch that one out completely. You know, so that's kind of my process on how I gauge.
I love it. I love it. I love what you said. Pay attention to how you feel. One of the things I like, I'm always saying, I'm a big believer in it is pay attention to when you feel your best. Who's around you? What are you doing? What's going on? What are the things that make you feel good? And a lot of those things, like we said earlier, those feelings that sensation can be influenced from previous generations. And so while tradition is always, I feel like, comforting to hold on to, it can be even better for you sometimes to let go. So, awesome answer. Thank you for sharing that. Big Top Badge Low in the building. Naj, what's your take? How do you decipher between this is what I want to hold on to traditionally, culturally, related to my family and all the things that are good and comfortable versus this is what I need to let go of? Um,
So I feel like for me, there's always like this question of whose voice is in my head. And we don't like we really have to sit here and say, is this my mother? Is this my father? Is this my grandmother? Is this my aunt? Is this my cousin? So a
right.
lot of time, are we doing this thing because it brings us benefit, it brings us joy, it's beneficial to our life, or are we doing it because we doing it out of obligation? So a lot of us in our younger, I would say teen into younger adult years, continue to do things because of obligation or what our communities say this looks good for optics or whatever. So we're just literally hearing these voices in our head until we start hearing our own and that start rising up above these other voices. And we kind of say, but wait, do I like this thing? Do I believe in this thing? Do I want to follow that thing or practice?
Right.
Like many
Right.
times people don't even question things. You ask people all the time, oh, why are you a this? Well, because my mother and my father's a this. and we're all a bunch of thises. So you don't know that, maybe I want to be a that. So you have to actually start questioning, am I doing things out of obligation or because I actually want to do it? And it's not just me duplicating a voice in my head because of guilt or obligation. So when I gauge something, I ask myself, am I doing this thing because it's carrying guilt with it or it's carrying obligation? And when I remove those two things, what's left is something that I want to do. It feels
Right.
good to me. It's a part of my tradition. I feel my most authentic self when I'm
Mhm.
still practicing that practice. There is no guilt or shame attached, and there is no obligation attached. And once I can do that, then I know that's coming from me. It's not coming from someone else.
Mm. What I'm consistently hearing through the answers is self-awareness, self-awareness, self-awareness. But we'll talk more of that during Elle Says. Naj, I know you have a show in about 3 minutes. Do you want to do an outro so you're on time?
All right, you guys. So definitely after this, Unfiltered and Rainmakers Live, pull up 12 a.m. And after this on Sunday, I will be, well, actually, I'm going to be in a couple things. This Thursday, Black History Month, 10 Summers, I'm going to be on her show representing Malcolm X at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm going to be on, I'm going to be another show Saturday, whatever that is. Just follow me on Instagram. You'll find out what that is. And on Sunday, you can definitely find me on Vibrate Higher with Naj. It's a big show this Sunday. I have Rainmaker as a guest. We're doing an anti-racism workshop. So the whole entire dialogue will be about racism to kind of close out the Black History Month energy and some energy that was going on the app about the use of the N-word and all of these things. So because Rainmaker professionally does anti-racism workshops, I do mental health and professional workshops and counseling. We wanted to combine that together and create a platform where we talk about racism. So that's going down this Sunday in Vibrate Higher with Naj, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you all on the panel. I had a great time. Thank you.
Thank you, Naj. I will definitely be there on Sunday at 8. That's lit. Y'all make sure y'all fave up Naj while she's still here and tap in Rain's Live for Unfiltered, all right? Now, Mr. Top Badge Jokes, I do want to get your take on this. I know this episode ran a little bit longer, but these were really in-depth answers, so I apologize. But I do want to get your take on this last question, and that is, how do you decide what's best to hold on to versus what's best to let go in the way you live your life and the way that you ultimately will decide to raise your children?
That's simple. That's just prayer. It's not up to me. I consult the man upstairs. I pray about it, and he leads and guides the steps. There were things that our parents did, our grandparents did that will help us, and at a general level, at a base level, that those foundational things will always be there, be a part of us if they're not going anywhere. But as the environment around us changes, we need to look back at the principles of things and apply them to modern times and continue to move.
I 1000% agree. These were great answers. Again, one of the things I want to point out is that y'all all talked about, to a certain degree, self-awareness and what feels good and what's right. And I think that's really the first part. And that's why we kind of talk about self-love and healthy modern day relationships. That's why we kind of highlight those things on the show, because at the end of the day, it comes down to knowing how to tend to yourself so that you can move forward living your absolute best life. And I think that, especially seems to be a generation where we are like curse breakers, if you will, or we're people that are kind of like breaking cycles and doing things differently, and you know what I mean, coming up in a different way. And I think that sometimes it's difficult to maneuver that whenever you don't have anybody kind of around you that may agree with the way that you see things, or it's like, that doesn't make you wrong, it doesn't make you weird, it doesn't make you need to stand out, or it just means that like how you need to live your life for you is not the way that it was for your parents. And that's really why we celebrate, taking things in from them, but ultimately living it in your modern day way, So again, thank you so much to my panelists who are here. CocoMa, I want to hold on to you for just 1 second, but big Top Badge Jokes, Big Bag Harley, thank y'all both for being here. Do y'all want to do your outros so you can get the people to fave you before you head out?
Yeah, it's your cousin Big Bag Harley. Make sure y'all follow me on Instagram and hit me with that face so that you can get your copy of the 2024 feature show host calendar, where we do have Miss Modern Day Bae herself at September. Okay, the revised edition is out. You are not going to want to miss that, and it's only on sale until the end of March. So get at me. Thank you, Elle, for having me on the show. This was a great topic. And shout out to our co-host, Top Badge CocoMa.
Period. Thank you, Big Bag Harley. Top bad jokes.
Always a pleasure to be here on Monday Bay with Elder Drug and all the people that are part of that special panel featuring Nas, featuring Big Back Harley, and of course special guest Top Batch CocoMa. Thank you. Just hearing your accent just brings back memories from my old my friends that used to be from Cameroon and stuff like that. So thank you. I appreciate that. L, you already know what it is. Catch me Tuesdays 9 p.m., Sundays 11 on drums. Come worship with me. I'll see y'all later. L always.
Always. Thank you, jokes. All right. And as we thank our guest co-host for all her input, I do want to make sure that I reiterate that these things come down to self-awareness and understanding how you feel about certain situations. You seeing sometimes it's important to take a step back and say, okay, that we keep doing this, but how ultimately did this affect my mom, or how did this ultimately affect my dad, or how did this ultimately affect my siblings or me, right? Like, how do these things actually manifest? And if they aren't something that is conducive to you living your best life, I really want you to reflect on that and think of a way to possibly release it and to overcome it. Because what's going to happen, and this is ultimately why we started off asking the questions about the parents, what's ultimately going to happen is you're going to pass on that behavior if you don't recognize it and if you don't correct it. And although it may have come from a place of love prior, how it manifests isn't always what you need, right? So I just want y'all to be cognizant of that. That's my little take on it. I do want to thank our guest co-host, Top Badge CocoMa, for being here tonight and for just having this conversation with us and putting not only your cultural input, but just the way, your perspective and the way you see things. It's very valuable, and I truly appreciate it. Do you want to tell the people one more time? I know you DRS. Okay, I know Team DRS, but do you want to tell the people at least like what they can expect in your stream, or why they should fave you before you box down?
Thank you for having me. I mean, in all honesty, I don't let fave me if you want to. For me, I feel like a lot of people be like, "Oh yeah, fave me." Like I don't really. I'm not really a fan of saying, fave me. But like if you like my vibe and you want to know more about where I'm coming from and like my culture and like my perspective or my accent, I heard that. Yeah, go ahead and fave me, but you're not obliged to fave me. I would definitely be talking about my culture though, like a lot. So if you're interested in knowing about the Cameroonian/Nigerian culture, definitely hit me with a fave.
I love it. I love it. Thank you again so much, CocoMa. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Elle.
Absolutely. You are welcome back anytime, y'all. Anytime. All right, y'all, make sure y'all tap in with CocoMa. She said don't favor, okay, unless you want to. She said don't do that unless you want to. But we do thank her for being here. Shout out to my panelists, Big Bag Harley, Top Badge Jokes on You, my girl Naj, your favorite alien. We appreciate y'all being here. This was a little bit of a more serious tone show, but I felt like it was important to talk about this because, in my personal experience, I feel like we are one of the most traumatized people in the world, right? Like we've lived through a lot of trauma, as we've already acknowledged in the show, that is literally and physically passed down through genetics. And so we have to be able to identify those traumas in order to move forward and to be a better people. So again, I appreciate y'all sticking with me through this, and we will be back next week with Top Badge CocoMelon. So make sure y'all tap in for that. Again, this is Modern Day Bay with Elle every single Tuesday at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. And until then, you can change the world by simply being yourself. Thank you so much again for joining us, and we will see you next week.